Awesome. Well, we are live today. Good morning, everybody in the sponsorship world. Nick Lawson here from Squad, and I have a very good, amazing guest here. I'm excited to dive into this, especially in the college scene. Ben, and Ben, I'm gonna apologize. How do you pronounce your last name? I'm sure I was going to butcher it.
That's all right.
Carruthers. Carruthers. There we go. Ben Carruthers. Excited to have you on, Ben. How's everything going, given what we're going through and the situation in sports?
Yeah. No. First off, thank you for having me. Love what you and Rich are doing with y'all's podcast. Obviously, that's how we kind of found each other, which is something I'll touch on a little bit later. But I mean, it is what it is. I guess we're in week 5 or 6 of this. It's just crazy times. I mean, this is unprecedented. I've got friends, former colleagues across the country in a wide variety of different leagues, properties, and kind of it's just really unprecedented. At Texas A&M, we're kind of taking it all in stride. We have, first off, at the university, unbelievable leadership that's given us a lot of guidance, given us a lot of courage, and given us a lot of insight in what's going on and being very transparent with us. And then from the rights holder standpoint with Learfield IMG, again, great leadership. Everyone's pulling on the same side of the rope. Everyone's helping each other get through it, share ideas, concepts, what's working, what's not working, what their partners are saying, what our partners are saying. And then all with our team at Texas A&M Ventures, we've got kind of a unique setup. Since Texas A&M is so big, our fan base really spans definitely across the state of Texas. We've got folks that are in College Station, in the DFW Metroplex, and then down in Houston where I'm at. So we're spread out. We're kind of used to being remote and working with each other, but more now than ever, our College Station team is working from home, and so communication is key. Keeping everyone in the loop on what is going on at all times of the day, and so it's been challenging, but it's also for the most part been very rewarding to see just a group that not only surrounds Texas A&M Ventures and the university, but really Learfield IMG College of just everyone coming together and pulling on the same side of the rope. It's been really cool to see just the help that everyone is, giving each other. This will end. It will end. When, I think, is the big question. The uncertainty is the scary part about it. But it will end, and sports will be back. And what capacity, who knows? But they will be back at some point.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely something to obviously look at and focus in on. I guess that's a perfect segue kind of to a first question for you. Obviously, a lot of things I've been hearing with partners in teams has just been that uncertainty. If your season truly is done, take away minor league baseball and minor league hockey, or sorry, minor league baseball and like soccer, in Major League Baseball. We kind of have some closure here. It doesn't seem like sports are coming back in college. Same thing with a lot of the hockey, although the pro hockey is looking that way. But, how are you kind of conveying to partners to say, look, we don't know when games are coming back, but here's how we're kind of dealing with it to sort of, make them still want to spend dollars with us, because obviously our live games are kind of our bread and butter.
Yeah, definitely. I think first and foremost, it's that transparency and being very honest and keeping them up to date on, what we're learning and what others that are in a leadership role are learning. I think that helps build the relationship. I think that helps build that trust and know that, when sports do come back, there certainly some aspects that are going to change. There's businesses that are being impacted by the coronavirus, no doubt. But really, that hey, whenever sports do finally come back, or if Major League Baseball were to start up after the All-Star break, or what, like the games are going to happen. There's still going to be the assets in place. Obviously, right now it's heavy on the digital social side, which our team is doing an outstanding job. I've seen a lot of really cool things around the country We can get into some of those here in a little bit, just
Mhm.
what, especially like NASCAR. I think the NASCAR iRacing is unbelievable, and their sponsor integration and how they're getting the drivers to do the simulators and race against each other. But I think at the end of the day, it kind of reiterates the fact that you have to have open communication with partners, with colleagues, and with prospects, with folks that you have been having discussions with prior to all this, and then being sensitive to the fact that now might not be the right time, or maybe a few weeks ago might not have been the right time to start new conversations.
Mhm.
But it all comes back to communication in relationships, in my opinion. That's kind of the cornerstone of sponsorships and partnerships, in my opinion, is the relationship piece to it. And hopefully, this will strengthen relationships and help guide how communication is going forward. But I think everyone is in the same boat where it's the what if, it's the uncertainty that just kind of keeps everyone up at night. And there's a million different scenarios and a million different plans that I think have been thrown out there. But I think we're just going to kind of have to wait and see how this thing plays out. And first and foremost, the health and safety of everyone is number one.
Mhm.
And that's something that I've kind of gone back to. I can only control what I can control, and
Mhm.
I'm not going to make the decision on when games come back or leagues start again. And so I can't worry about it because I can't control it. All I can worry about again is that communication and being very transparent.
Yeah, I think that's a key thing. One topic or consistency I've seen there has just been transparency. Not saying, "Hey, we will get games back on this day. You'll be fine with your signage," coming in and saying, "Hey, look, I don't know. When I know, you'll know. Here's what we
Yeah,
can do in the interim." I've follow Texas A&M on social. Big fan of what you guys are doing digitally. It seems like a lot of the content, the rewinds. There was what you're doing with HEB. Is it Heb? I'm not. There's no HEB here in Portland, but those recipe items
yeah,
obviously
yeah,
lead to sales, kind of for the products for that.
yeah.
Kind of mindset wise, when this hit, maybe you already had some sponsored content there, but can you dive into just a little bit of the strategy? Hey, how are we going to build sponsors authentically into some of this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's HEB. You call it
Okay.
Heb, but HEB, yeah, they're one of our Texas favorites. I mean, they're such an unbelievable company. I used to live up in DFW, and there's not HEBs up there. And when I moved down to the Houston area, my wife and I were joking because we were like, "Yes, we're gonna live in where there's HEBs. We're gonna roast it out there again." But I think some of it, is obviously organic. I mean, that concept made sense for a grocery partner. And HEB has started their, kind of, they're a traditional grocery store, but they also have in-home items that they cook up. And it's things that you can find in HEB, and they'll cook it, and you can bring it home. So I think it's just it's a natural fit. I think it also goes to some of those classic rewind calls. That was a partner that's primarily a radio partner. So our fans are used to hearing their messaging. They can direct their messaging using those old things. I think one of the coolest things that we do, and that our social team at the university, and 12th Man Productions, who's our production in-house production crew, they're unbelievable. I mean, it's just an unbelievable team at Texas A&M. But our Aggie Town Hall, that our healthcare partner sponsors, where it's 12 minutes. 12 is home of the 12th man, so it's 12 minutes with our AD, our radio guys, and some other senior administrators in the athletic department, to really give fans a kind of a view of what the athletic department is doing, and it gives fans the opportunity to ask questions. I know a couple weeks ago there were a lot of questions about eligibility, and is there going to be an extra year granted, and how that would affect the athletic department. And again, I go back to transparency. On that town hall, which anyone can view, our leadership is telling exactly what is going on behind the scenes and how it is going to impact. So the transparency is just unbelievable. But it's a collaborative effort. Our client service team has done just a great job of communication with the athletic department, getting these concepts up and running. And then the organic piece to matching partners to it, or what partners were doing in the past, similar to the assets that they have. But it's an unbelievable team that Texas A&M's assembled and has created this content. And that's the good thing about having 12 man productions and having all of that content at your hands, is that it's there. It's there for you to use. I used to work for the Texas Rangers for 6 seasons, and you don't necessarily get a lot of that in the social online world in Major League Baseball because of Major League Baseball advanced media. And so working for a college, having that archive content and having all of that at your disposal, and then having just a talented team backing that. From my standpoint, I'm not involved on the day-to-day of that, just because those communications going on in College Station, and there's some relationships and there's some funnels that everything goes through. But it's been a really good process, and again, it's strengthening those relationships from Texas A&M Ventures in the university.
Yeah, what's interesting, it always happens. You have some sponsors who are signage. This has always worked. This is what will work for us. You have some sponsors who will dive a little bit in digital. You have some sponsors that will only do digital, and that's just how they roll. Have you seen, obviously out of circumstance, the only assets you can fully engage with are the digital ones. Have you seen any shifting from a partner who was like, you know what, I'll never buy a sponsor tweet, and then it jump over to, well, I'm actually loving this, I should have done this a year ago type of deal?
Yeah, I think that the A&M fan, they consume Texas A&M athletics socially, digitally already, and so a lot of our partners had that as part of their partnership agreements to begin with. I think that it has become definitely more valuable because that's where everything is living. That just for taking me, for example, I'm at home. I've got 3 kids. I've got a wife that runs a business out of the house. I'm consuming all of my sports information on LinkedIn, a little bit of Facebook, checking out, websites, things like that. So that's where everyone's living right now. Everyone still wants to consume it, and they want to relive those moments. I know just before we hopped on earlier this morning, I was just looking at Texas A&M Athletics YouTube page and watching some old intros into Kyle Field from the 2019 season. And I mean, I got goosebumps watching it and just thinking, how cool is it going to be whenever we get back there and we can then take our partners, our clients down there on the field to watch, the 2020 A&M team enter Kyle Field. So there's just so many cool things about the college space, and so many great pieces of content that you talk about creating that experience. Those experiences can live online and on those channels. And so how do you integrate those partners into reliving those experiences as well?
Yeah. Now, obviously you all are doing a great job, but it seems there's a lot of sort of kudos going around. Is there any other organization? I know you talked a little bit about NASCAR, and we work with MRN and have loved what they've sort of shifted there out of necessity and almost created a new sport that they can monetize when it comes back.
Yeah.
But what are you seeing out there where you're just like, man, that's awesome. That's a great integration.
Well, as a longtime video game player growing up, I love anything that has to do with the video game tournaments that are going on. I mean, MLB The Show. One of my former college teammates is representing the Cardinals doing it. I know that Joey Gallo is just doing unbelievable with the Rangers. I haven't been able to check all that out on Twitch or check out how the games are going, if they have league partners involved or what is that. I saw that Fernando Tatis Jr. hit like 3 home runs as himself or something the other day. I think anything like that, how NBA 2K is doing theirs. I know MLS is doing something on FIFA or whatever game. With 3 kids, I don't get to play video games. But the iRacing thing, I listened to a podcast with NASCAR's, I think he was the director of gaming, and he talked about how they had that program in place, and then when I think it was at Homestead, I think it was Miami Homestead, that race got shut down. They just naturally navigated that event to the iRacing. And it's like they had that program in place, so they might have got lucky, but I think they were already onto something because, now you get that younger generation, that younger wave of NASCAR fans who now are consuming that on FS1, on Fox, from the iRacing standpoint, with the actual drivers racing the simulators. I mean, how cool, I don't know how much cooler you can get than that.
Mhm.
And then taking the sponsors of each car and integrating that into the game. And then they had a Texas Motor Speedway one the other day where I saw all their sponsors. It's just technology is unbelievable, and what a day and age that we live for this to happen, to where leagues, teams, properties are getting very creative on what they can do. And I know that esports is a huge thing as well. As far as like the leagues go, you're starting to see a little bit more partnership announcements on big companies, traditional companies in the sponsorship game, going over into that side, because people are consuming it. People are consuming it in massive numbers. I know that the iRacing is almost 1 million viewers, which is incredible. So I think those are some of the really, really cool things. I know that there's some other companies out there that the one that comes to mind, I think, is Fanatics, that's kind of adjusting their product line to create gowns or masks, things like that. I mean, it's so cool to see companies shift for the better good. And it's one thing that I think I've taken away early on is just the empathy that is shown throughout. And this isn't just, this whole thing isn't just affecting the sports world or oil and gas. I mean, it's affecting everybody. And you have to have that in the back of your mind whenever you're having conversations with anyone, whether it's a partner, a prospect, or your neighbor. You never know what they're going through. And so if you lead with empathy, if you lead with, what can I do to help you through this? I think that goes a long way in the long run.
Yeah, and that's so important, especially, again, there's going to be different varying levels of crisis mode for partners. There's some partners that we have who are right on the edge, trying to stay alive and keep employees open. There's some partners who are just doing fine and, sales are great and understanding that. But, I really, what's interesting is, just the readiness of a digital asset. You can start to see the teams that invested early in digital and could make that shift really quickly are really, really winning right now. And, if it tells you anything, it's that, you don't have to dive all the way in on digital at first or whatever trend is. But, you better be able to play a little bit because you never know what's going to happen. And think about the amount of money that NASCAR would have lost had they not had that kick in, as opposed to, I'm sure they still lost some money, but it's that haircut is a lot less kind of on the budget. Thinking toward when we get back to games, this is what's been really intriguing for me. I'm in the sponsorship talks, both we're in with our clients, and what I'm hearing around the industry is, we had our fan zones and our pre-games, we had our tailgates, we had our food vendors, who are selling at our games. And now, whether the surveys are correct, a lot of people are saying, well, I don't know when I'd go back to a sports game because it's a lot of people in a large crowd. And I'm still a little bit worried that, whether we figured this virus thing out or not. Are you seeing that with your partners? And then what are some of the ways that you're sort of, making it certain that, that their partnership value can still get it at a live game, and convince them to keep with some of those, maybe not the same assets, but some different ones?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one, because I think every company, every agreement, everyone's objectives are a little bit different. Everyone's value that they put on different assets are a little bit different. I obviously, can't speak to, what the future is going to hold. I can just go back to hey, we value the partnership. We know you value the partnership. We're going to make this through it together. if there becomes an opportunity to where a asset is less valuable, then let's work collaboratively and figure out what is going to work for you. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, I tell this story to folks that ask me kind of how I got started in the sponsorship world. I got hired out of grad school for the Rangers and didn't really know a whole lot about sponsorships. To be honest with you, I was very green. I used to just try to do any deal that I could do, whether it really made sense or not. And once I really started listening to what prospects or current partners or folks that are up for renewal actually listen to what they're saying and what their objectives are, and then building something to match those objectives, it was a huge win, not only that year, but every year after that. And, some didn't work, some didn't come back, but the relationship was there, the transparency was there to where they knew that I listened to them. We tried it. If it didn't work, it didn't work out for whatever reason. So I think that still holds true, is that, hey, if there's an asset that isn't going to work, we're going to find something that is going to work. We'll adjust with you. We'll work with you. It's a partnership. It's not transactional. And so I think that's just kind of what I would go on. Luckily we're still planning on a football season until we're told otherwise. I think the last thing that we want to do is get into a situation where we think there's not going to be one and then there is one. So, I mean, and obviously, again, we can't look into the future of things, but I think it just goes to, hey, if partners' objectives has changed, be willing to listen to those partners' objectives and be able to shift if you can. I know that fans out there want to consume the game. If it's just on TV, no fans, TV visible assets become much greater. Is it a shift in messaging? Is it companies that are looking to rehire or hire in different regions? Is that kind of a shift in messaging and things? So I think it's still a lot of unknown. But I go back to be willing to listen, be willing to be a good partner, and really be willing to work with people during these times, because probably objectives have changed in some form or fashion.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was, but one of my early sponsorship mentors used to always say that your customers are the cheat code. It's just, it's the cheat sheet. You ask them what they want, and then you build for whatever goal they have. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes you have to be big enough to say, hey, look, your goal is this, and we don't do very well at that. So I'm going to be fully transparent with you. This is going to be a little bit of an experiment, but my goal is to help you hit this. I just want to be real with you. So that's a perfect segue into kind of the next piece. I can't imagine having gone through college or even, grad school, working my entire 6 years to get to a point where I can enter the sports world and then have this happen. So obviously crazy circumstances than, when you and I jumped in. Do you have any sort of advice for, hey, if, how can I get in front of teams in order to, whether it's internship or employment, even get my name on the board when so much turmoil is happening in the industry?
Yeah. During this time, it's tough. Let me start from just a little bit of advice that I've learned over the years from people, and kind of how I got my start. I would say the first thing is be very curious, and build your network. Everyone, I think, in the sports industry had someone help them along the way, had someone either vouch for them, give them a reference, hire them part-time, do something. So most folks within the sports industry that I've met have been willing to have a conversation, whether that's a LinkedIn reach out, whether that's a cold email, or whether that's a, hey, I'm friends with so-and-so. Open your network up. The sports world is a small world. And you never know when someone, maybe someone doesn't know of anything, but they might know of someone that, just started working for this company or knows about something over here. So just be curious. Start with, hey, I want to learn a little bit more about how you got started, And I think the second part of that is research some people that you see out there that you really like and that you really admire for what they've done. And I look back at my time with the Rangers, and there's a number of people that I admire and still look up to. But when I was getting my start, I didn't really know what I was going to do. I got out of undergrad. I played a college sport. Didn't really know what I was going to do. Nobody liked sports, so there was a new athletic director at TCU at the time. His name was Chris Del Conte, and I said, you know what, athletic director, that's a really cool job. I want to go research his background. I want to go see where he came from. Well, I noticed that he had his master's degree, so I went back to TCU and got my master's degree. Started building my network up, and actually got to work underneath him for another associate AD named Scott Cole, who's now at the University of Utah. Learned a lot from him, but that was something that I was like, I'm going to follow their path because that's an interesting job. I was 22 years old. That's an interesting job. Through that, I got introduced to the Rangers and started kind of a different path in the sponsorship world. And so, that's kind of, I would just say, be curious, reach out. You never know. You really never know when an opportunity is going to rise. And then kind of to go alongside that, I would just say be patient. Be very patient, because you look up at, CEOs of teams, presidents of teams, senior vice presidents, executive vice presidents. They didn't start that whenever they were getting out of college or getting out of grad school. They worked their way up for that. When you get an opportunity, be patient, put your head down, and always look for opportunities to, increase your value. If you're an intern and you get given, the role of creating proposals, when you're done with that, go into your direct report and say, hey, what else can I do to make your life easier or make someone else's life easier? That goes a long way. Being willing to communicate that and to approach that in that situation of, I want to help move this organization, this property, this company forward. It goes a long way. And then those are the kind of things that lead to maybe full-time jobs, or, hey, my buddy over at, XYZ company needs somebody. I want you to apply for this job. So be curious, pick someone that you admire and kind of look at their path, and then just stay real patient, because your time will come if you keep your head down and work.
Yeah, definitely. And as we kind of wind down the time here, we got our first question from Larry. And this is an interesting one. What are your feelings on a virtual/remote internship? Which is a good point. I'm sure a lot of people aren't, it's a tough time to pack everything up and move across country with now. What are your thoughts on that? It seems like everybody's remote now, so it's never been a better time for that.
I mean, with technology these days, I could see that happening. I could very easily see that happening. With the option to screen share, to get on video calls, to call into conferences. Obviously, it would take out a little bit all of the human interaction and just the nonverbal kind of that interaction of things. I feel like it probably would lessen the anxiety or stress of a first-time intern with the ability to just get on a conference call and not have to walk down to someone's office. I don't know. I mean, it's going to happen. It certainly is going to happen. I think that it creates a whole new line of opportunities for kids that maybe can't move or don't have the resources to, or a company doesn't have the resources to move them. Or I think that's a very interesting, and I've never actually thought about that, but I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah, and when sports do come back, that's a tough one, just because the game day is so vital sometimes to be there at activation, and then in sponsorship, it is very much, like you said, not a transactional piece. So yeah, it's a thing where when games get back, it's going to be a little bit tougher, because nothing virtually can teach you sitting across from a sponsor and saying, hey, here's what we have, and here's how can we help. But I think for right now, I mean, especially if students are getting out there, a great time to kind of reach out to some of those people, as you said, be curious to see how they got there, and then say, if I did some custom reports on some prospects, for, you know, when things are ready and we can start prospecting again, would that be helpful? And that's a huge step in the door, way more than kind of just, you know, hey, I'm looking for an internship. I'm looking, you know, what do you have open? So I think a big thing here, I mean, that's how you want to kind of reach out and engage on that end. So
yeah, definitely. And one comment on your kind of game day experience. There's so much that goes into game day, whether that be at Kyle Field, whether that be at New Globe Life Field, you know, whether that be at, you know, in Kinston with the Down East Wood Ducks, right? There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of communication. There's a lot of things that happen, you know, coinciding with each other that would be very tough to, you know, emulate virtually. And that's part of the game day experience, is how all those moving pieces come together. And for the fan and the outsider, it looks seamless, right? It looks seamless. But behind the scenes on the headsets are, you know, things could be going crazy. That's where, as like an intern or a first year person, you learn a lot about the business and how much goes behind the scenes of getting the product on the field. There is a ton. In a lot of those situations, they come at a split second and they happen fast, and you need decisions, and you need, hey, I need to get this, you know, my president of a company into Kyle Field and we don't have a key. You got to know the person to call. That's where the human interaction comes in really good, in those relationships, going around to the departments, talking to people, getting into little small group meetings and those kind of things. So those things are tough. And I will say that I at least for the organizations that I've been a part of, the people that are a part of those organizations have been there for quite some time. And so they all know each other and they kind of know how things go. But I was a grad assistant at TCU and worked on the sports marketing side for the university. That first game day at Amon Carter was like, it was insane how much behind the scenes goes in, even to just getting a simple presentation done on the field, getting everyone coordinated to get down during that media timeout. I was like, wow, I had no idea. But again, those are the kind of things that if folks are looking to break into the sports industry, reach out to people and ask them about those situations. I think one of the things that I've enjoyed during this time, working from home, you know, not necessarily in the first part soliciting a lot of outgoing sales calls and things like that, just to be sensitive and just to really understand what's going on, is re-engaging with colleagues and folks around the country and having these kind of conversations about, man, what are you going through? What are your folks saying? What are y'all? And just to catch up with them and say, hey, man, I didn't know that you had went here or done this. It's, again, there's a lot of leagues, there's a lot of teams, there's a lot of sports. The world's really small, and everyone, you know, pulls for each other and likes each other. And so that's been one of my favorite things actually during this time, is just reconnecting with old colleagues, finding out more about their lives, finding out, you know, talking war stories about, you know, late nights at Globe Life Park, and, you know, sticking it out to a 16 inning, extra inning game that, you know, the Rangers didn't win, and we got to be back up here for a 12:05 first pitch on Saturday. Those are the cool things about sports, and those are the things at the end of the day. It's like, man, this is why we do this, because you don't really have a whole lot. Actually, you have no impact on the outcome of the games. But man, it grips at you and it gets at you, and you get a lot of time into each game, and the people that you go through with it are usually the most important pieces of all that.
Yeah, no, I remember, you know, my first game day, addicting was the word, just meaning the controlled chaos of it was the most stressful 3 hours of my life, because what happens when the kid who's supposed to say play ball is too afraid to say play ball, and you have about 5 minutes, you know, thank goodness, you know, there's a color guard presentation, so you can go into the stands and find somebody and say, hey, you want to be the play ball kid? And that's, you know, and not only that, I know some people who've gotten into sports who went through a game day and were just like, hey, this is not for me. This, you know, this high stress, things are going to go wrong. We got to figure out. it's, it's a full 9 to 5 of working and then 6 to midnight, and then you're back at 9 to 5 the next day. So I think that's where that piece really comes in. And, if you can't get that right now, I think, learning as much of the back office as you can so that you're a little bit more prepared for that is going to be key. I'm always intrigued with game day, like plans, like, some teams will actually print out minute by minute. And I love seeing whenever a client will give me it, I'll see the game day kind of program plan.
Yeah.
And I'll just go through and be like, that was planned, but they totally shifted it to here. And that, I'm sure that if you're getting into sports, I'm sure that there's somebody who's willing to give you like a year or 2 year ago plan, just so you can kind of see and study that, so you can kind of understand to say, oh, wow, they literally have every 2-minute increment planned out because, who knows what's going to happen. And the last thing you want to do is not have something, planned out and have to adjust and understand what that affects later. So
exactly.
So yeah, it's super interesting on that end. We're running up on time here. Ben, thanks so much for your time. Any last questions, or thoughts for kind of the group or people on LinkedIn Live?
I would actually just encourage folks to check out your podcast, the Inches podcast. I mean, y'all are putting out some really good stuff, coming from two kind of opposite perspectives, in my opinion. One that's on the front lines with Rich, and you that's doing a lot of stuff digitally, working with teams and organizations. So that, and then, just hang in there. I mean, it's kind of what all we can do at this point is stay positive. Again, be the kind of person that's going to look to help others and see what you can do during it. And then also utilize this time to build your network up and collaborate with colleagues across the country, because no one's in this alone. Everyone could use a new voice to talk to every day and something positive going on. So I appreciate the opportunity to get to talk to you. It's been great, getting to know you over the last few weeks, and look forward to hopefully doing this again sometime soon.
Yeah, whenever you want. It's my big thing is I've been in sponsorship. It's only been 6 years. Rich has been in it for longer than I've been alive. So it's like, some episodes I'll kind of put my perspective on the Inches podcast, but really it's just like, the reason why we started the podcast is I used to sit in his office. We'd have maybe a 10-minute scheduled quick update on this activation for the sponsor. And then I just started asking questions like, man, when a recession hits, what happens? Or, why don't you guys do all digital? Why, what's the trackability of a sign? And of course, he just puts me right back into my place and says, well, obviously this, and this. So I think you're totally right. If right now, especially for us really, really young people in the industry, especially if we've never been through a recession kind of on that end, really leaning on the people who have been there. The terrible stigma is that the older guys and gals don't know digital, which is not true. But the stigma is like, oh, well, they're very old school mindseted. What I learned, and I was that person who came in and just said, digital, digital, digital. Everything needs to be digital. And again, Rich put me in my place and reminded me that signage has value. Yeah. Is it, in towards certain sponsors, is it amazing value that's as trackable? For some sponsors, yes, it's amazing. For others, no. But I think that's the big thing is, we come in hot with all of our ideas and sometimes kind of discount the people who have been there for 30 years. And again, that's why I do the Inches podcast is every time, every time I'm like, hey, Rich, I want to talk about, like, we almost did a podcast about unfreezing budgets. And I was like, Rich, I want to do a podcast about how you unfreeze a brand's budget. And he was just like, well, right now you can't. The budget is frozen. Right. It's, when you get games back, maybe you can unfreeze some stuff. So it's, just to piggyback off what you said, it's find that person who's been there, help build, really build that relationship and see how you can help. And in sports, that's the biggest thing. It's who is going to get you those next jobs, and I'm excited just to jam with people like you and hear those different perspectives, and that's kind of why I do all this content, is just for all the people listening, they can hopefully hear something today that they can go implement and go help on that. And so,
Sure.
we'll definitely have you back on, maybe with just a recap, a month, 2 months later, hopefully when we hear, hey, we have games back, hey Ben, what are you doing at A&M for those next steps? So really appreciate your time this evening. And I hope you have a great week, and stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy your time at home with your girls and your wife.
All right. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it, man.
Yep. See ya.
Bye-bye.